YouTube, in this video, I'm going to be ranking every single NBA team on Tiermaker.com in a tier list for the upcoming 2025 NBA season. I'm not going to be using the standard S to F tier list rankings for this video. I actually went ahead and created my own tiers for very specific purposes to kind of separate these teams fairly and accurately. And before we get into the rankings, I just want to take you through the tiers that I set up so this will all make sense. In the first tier, I have the Celtics tier, and we're going to go ahead and put the Celtics right up there because, in my opinion, the Celtics are just a tick above every other team in the NBA. This recording, of course, being just before the tip-off of the 2025 NBA season, so a lot of this could change, but in my opinion, right now, the Celtics are just, like I said, a tick above every team. And, you know, obviously the Celtics tier will be reserved just to the Boston Celtics. The next tier will be elite. So this is going to be your tier with finals hopefuls, right? Like legit finals hopefuls too. Not like, you know, this team will have like the 5th seed in the East or West, and maybe if everything went right for them and perfect throughout the season, they could make the finals, right? I'm talking about teams that we expect to have great results in this season, that we expect to be elite teams in their conferences. So this tier will be reserved for just a strict few teams in each conference that are legit finals contenders. Now, in the tier just below that, I have very close. And this is the tier where, like I said before, if everything goes well for them throughout the season, if every question is answered perfectly for these teams, we could see a world where maybe they could make a finals push. Maybe if a acquisition at the deadline, or if something unforeseen happens that works in their benefit. These things happen all the time. These teams are very, very close to being in that elite tier. Maybe they're just a piece away, or they need some really good luck. In the tier below that, I have playoff caliber, and that kind of speaks for itself. These are teams that might not necessarily make the playoffs, but they're absolutely a playoff caliber team in either conference. And so they could end up being the 9 seed, but you know, they are clearly good enough to be a playoff team, but they're just a little bit worse than maybe some of these very close teams. And the tier below that, I have play-in caliber. Again, kind of speaks for itself. This is the kind of middle area between a rebuilding, like bottom lottery team, and a playoff caliber team. So we might not expect some of these teams to make the play-in, or we might expect some of these teams to make the play-in, but they are certainly play-in caliber if everything works in their favor. They could make the play-in tournament, but they're just not quite bad enough to be in the rebuilding category, and that is the final tier, which is rebuilding. This tier is reserved for like the worst teams in the league, and they will certainly be towards the bottom of the lottery. Now, that is the tier set up here. I feel pretty confident about how this will accurately separate teams throughout the 2025 season. Now, if you guys do want to see more content like this, before we get into it, make sure you guys leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be posting content just like this, most of the time a little bit more creative, in-depth NBA content throughout the entire 2025 season, either every day or very close to every day on this channel. So make sure you guys do subscribe. Without further ado, let's get right into the rankings, folks. I'm going to start with alphabetical order, of course, being the Atlanta Hawks. Listen, I think the Atlanta Hawks are certainly in this play-in caliber tier. You know, I don't necessarily think they're playoff caliber. We look at some of these other teams that are going to be ahead of them. I think they're a little bit stronger of a play-in caliber team, but this is a team I expect to be in the play-in, no question. And how they improved this offseason, they've certainly bolstered their perimeter defense. They're a much better defensive team this season, in my opinion. Now you have Trae Young just basically doing Trae Young things, not having to share a lot of touches and half-court sets with DeJounte Murray. Trae Young can really kind of take over this offense once again. That's when the Hawks are at their best, in my opinion, when Trae Young is running the show. And so you bring in Reece Shea, you bring in Dyson Daniels. I love the perimeter defense. I think Jalen Johnson is going to take a massive leap this season. I've said it a million times on the channel. He's going to be a star this season, and he's really going to break out. I have the Atlanta Hawks as a play-in caliber team. I just don't know if they're going to be necessarily a playoff caliber team. I think maybe next year or the year after that, we could see them jump up to this spot. But for now, I have the Atlanta Hawks. And one more thing I wanted to mention, once I have all these teams in their respective tier, I will be like sorting them worst to best. So like if the best play-in caliber team is the Hawks, I'll have them first. So I'll kind of be sorting them throughout the video. And at the end of the tier list, you know, the best of the elite will be over here where my mouse is, and the worst of the elite will be like down here, for example. So Brooklyn Nets, you know, this is clearly a rebuilding team. I don't think anyone expects this team to win more than, you know, 20, 25 games. I think that is a kind of good mark for them because I like what they're doing rebuilding, actually moving in a very good direction for their franchise, trading Mikal Bridges away. They have a lot of nice pieces on their roster, including Nick Claxton, Noah Clowney, Cam Thomas, right? We could see some of these older players moved by the deadline, like Dorian Finney-Smith, Dennis Schroeder, Cam Johnson. Ben Simmons is looking to make a return to a healthy Ben Simmons form, where he'll be looking in a contract year to up his game a little bit, and so that could maybe move the needle for them a little bit, but this is certainly a rebuilding team in my opinion. They're going to be one of the worst records in the league this season, but again, that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing for the Nets. They have their draft picks again, and so this is actually a good thing that they're in the bottom tier. Now, for the Charlotte Hornets, this is a play-in caliber team, just behind the Hawks. I expect this team to be very competitive in the Eastern Conference, and what I mean by competitive competitive is not necessarily they're going to be, a playoff team, right? They're going to be competing, for these top spots. I mean, they're going to be competitive game to game. They're going to be night to night giving teams issues. I like their lineup. They just got to stay healthy, man. We have LaMelo Ball returning. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Miles Bridges, haven't even seen him and LaMelo Ball play a full healthy season in a while. And I feel like the last time they did, they were certainly playing caliber. Brandon Miller, I expect to take a big leap this season. He is one of my breakout candidates. I think he plays like a star this season. You really start to see him put things together. I like the Josh Green addition. He's going to provide some quality 3-and-D wing play. You have a great center tandem in a young Mark Williams and Nick Richards tandem there. This is a good basketball team, and again, pretty competitive in the Eastern Conference. I expect them to be somewhere around the play-in tournament. Play-in caliber for the Charlotte Hornets makes a lot of sense to me. And for the Chicago Bulls, I think I'm going to go play-in caliber, but they are going to be towards the end of play-in caliber once this thing is all finished. I have to give the Bulls the benefit of the doubt just slightly, because when you consider Zach LaVine, Coach Donovan has said he looks the healthiest he's seen him in a couple years, and that is saying something, because we all know Zach LaVine at his best is one of the most talented scorers in this entire league. He gets the ball in the basket very effectively from all three levels, and so I have to put the Bulls there when considering Zach LaVine's returning, when considering Lonzo Ball is returning, when you have young pieces like Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Patrick Williams coming back and hoping to make their mark on this squad. You have Nick Vucevic, who is still one of the most talented offensive centers in the league. I don't care what anyone says. This guy is a very good offensive player, very skilled. All these things considered, you might have the Bulls a favorite at the deadline to trade away some of their best players, which I think is totally possible. But at the end of the day, I just think the Bulls roster right now, which is the information I have to work with for this list, I have to put them play-in caliber, but I certainly expect them to be the bottom tier of this, play-in caliber unit. And when it's all said and done, I do think they'll have a really bad record in the Eastern Conference, but we just can't predict what's going to happen at the deadline, so I have to put them here for now. I think they will be competitive with a lot of teams in the East with the lineup they're putting on the floor today, right? So the Cleveland Cavaliers I have is very close. This team is just a great season away, and maybe a little bit more chemistry gelling, and hopefully Coach Atkinson can make that happen for this team from being in this elite tier. I actually think you could, convince me that this team could be elite tier for the Eastern Conference. This is a playoff team, could be a top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. No question. They have one of the best starting fives of any team in the league. We just have to see what Coach Atkinson tries to employ as a strategy and system to try to get this, big four to really kind of gel together and play a little bit better as a fit, and I like some of the pieces they have at the wing, right? Like Max Strus is probably going to be the starting 3. Then you have Isaac Okoro off the bench, and now you draft rookie Jalen Tyson, who I like quite a bit. And so this team has a lot of promise and potential, and halfway through the season, I could change my mind and put them elite tier. They're going to win a lot of games this season, and they're going to be a problem in the Eastern Conference, no question. If this thing gets off and running with Coach Atkinson, like I said, this could be a legit threat in the Eastern Conference to, challenge Boston. For the Dallas Mavericks, this is an elite team. These are teams in elite tier that we're expecting to, go to the finals, or at very minimum the conference finals, right? And so I'm going to have more teams in here than are mathematically possible to go to the conference finals, because at the end of the day, it's only 4 teams total. And so I might have like 6 or 7, but we expect all of these teams to get out of the second round, no question. And Dallas Mavericks for me are one of them. They have improved a lot this offseason, and that's saying something because they were in the finals last season against the Boston Celtics. Luka is coming back healthy. You have Kyrie, who looks to be playing extremely exceptional at his age. You have Klay Thompson coming in, who's going to just make this offense so much more dynamic in a half-court setting. You're not going to be able to double Luka and Kyrie as much, which I think is a big deal. And you also bring in Najee Marshall to play backup 4 minutes. Going to add a ton of defense and toughness to this lineup. Coming in for, PJ Washington, who is also a good, starting caliber 4. And then the center tandem with Lively and Gafford, one of the best center tandems we've seen in the league. And so, this has all of these signs of a conference finals team, no question. I mean, the West is super loaded and tough, but if you had to, ask me who's going to be a top 4 seed or top 5 seed in the West with, legit some of the best odds to make the conference finals, I would 100% pick the Mavericks right up there in that conversation. Another team that has to be elite tier is the Denver Nuggets. When we're talking about losing KCP, obviously that's a big loss, right? This is going to hurt them a little bit defensively, but I do think they have a very good replacement for KCP. It's not necessarily a 1-to-1. I think this player needs to show a little bit more improvement, but that is Christian Brown, taking over that starting 2-guard role. Either way you look at it, this team has the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic. No one disputes that. I don't care what player you root for, what team you root for. If you say that Jokic isn't the best player in the world right now, you're not paying attention, and you might not be watching basketball, because he just is. And so you have dynamic pieces around him. Let's not forget this team has maybe the best 2-man tandem as far as production, chemistry, and overall cohesion in Jamal Murray and Jokic. I mean, people just forget about Jamal Murray. Like, he had a bad playoff run, I get it, but at the end of the day, this guy is one of the best players at his position in the entire league, and he always seems to perform. Other than last season, he always seems to perform when the lights are brightest. Now you have MPJ coming back and Aaron Gordon. You know, you bring in Dario Saric, Russell Westbrook. These are good additions. The Nuggets will be a top 4 seed in the West, no question, and they will be, again, another team we expect to make it out of that second round. You know, barring some crazy injury or anything, knock on wood, that doesn't happen, but this is an elite team. You know, there's no question about it for me. And for the Detroit Pistons, this is another play-in caliber team. I don't know that I feel great about this ranking here. Again, this is another team along with the Bulls that I probably feel more comfortable putting in this tier than the rebuilding tier, because in a perfect world, you could see the Pistons, you know, challenging for a 10 seed, right? You could see the Bulls challenging for a 10 seed. And so I don't know that it's fair to these two teams to put them in the rebuilding tier. I think we reserve that tier for teams we expect to be at the bottom of the conference. And I mean, like, really expect. Like, yeah, the Pistons could end up, you know, 13th or 12th, right? But to say that we could expect them to be 15th or 14th, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. And so in a perfect world, if everything goes well with Coach Bickerstaff and he really gets these guys fired up, gets them to play good basketball with each other, you know, maybe we see a big leap from Cade, like we already saw last season when he played like an all-star, you know, with his production. Maybe we see a leap from Jalen Duren. You bring in some veterans that could help this team raise their floor as far as win total, right? Like Malik Beasley, like Tobias Harris, like Tim Hardaway Jr. And so at the end of the day, the Pistons, if you told me right now, you know, at the end of the season, this team is going to win 35 games and they're going to be challenging for that 10 seed, I'd probably believe you. You know, I'd say that's possible. So I have to put them in this tier. I do think they'll be a little bit worse than the Bulls, just given the rosters I'm looking at right at this moment. Again, this is before the season starts. No trades have happened, you know, as far as these two teams. And so, you know, the Bulls certainly could end up worse than the Pistons. Yeah, probably just going to have the Bulls here for now, just given the roster we have. The Golden State Warriors, this is a playoff caliber team. You know, I think one of the things that's going to be interesting about the Warriors is to watch around the deadline to see if this team makes a big move for a second star to pair with Steph Curry. They have a lot of tradable contracts. They have a lot of tradable young assets. They do have a draft pick, I believe. So this team is in the mix for a big time trade towards the deadline. Not so sure they're actually going to do it. Again, we'll have to see. It'll be interesting there. But, you know, even if the roster stays the same right now, this is one of the deepest teams in the entire league. And you also have a top 10 player in the world in Steph Curry, and that doesn't hurt. You have a great system, a great coach, great culture. You know, this team's going to win at least 40 games this season, even with losing Klay Thompson. So I think playoff caliber makes sense to me. I think they could, you know, challenge for a 6 seed if this depth really works to perfection. If, you know, Steph Curry stays healthy the whole season and plays like he has been playing. In a perfect world, you know, I could see this team hover around the top end of the play-in tournament with a 7 or 8 seed, or maybe even challenge for a 6. And so the West is going to be a tight race. We all know that. And I expect, you know, anywhere from like the 4th seed or 5th seed all the way down to like the 8th seed being very, very close towards the end of the season. They all could finish within 5 or 3 games of each other. And so I think the Warriors are in that conversation. I might hear an argument where they're playing caliber, but I think, you know, when you look at some of these other teams that we're going to be putting in there, I just think it's a little bit unfair to the Warriors if you're going to put them in this play-in caliber tier. So another play-in caliber team, I have the Houston Rockets, and this team's going to be at the top of the play-in caliber. You know, this is a great young team with a lot of energy, with a lot of, you know, identity forming play last season. I think this team's identity is going to be that of toughness and defense, right? And not only that, another team that is, you know, maybe the deepest team in the West. And you have the veterans, you have the young budding talents that could be making a leap to stardom. We've already seen Alperen Sengun take a lot of those steps. I think he's about a season away from being a real legit all-star caliber player in this league. You could argue that maybe he already is. You bring in Reed Shepherd in the draft. I think he's one of the favorites for Rookie of the Year. He's going to have one of the best rookie seasons. Jalen Green, you know, this is a season where he's going to have to put it all on the line, say, you know what, I am worth that max contract. Fred VanVleet is such a amazing leader and mentor for these guys, and he played really well in that point guard role last season. Dylan Brooks revitalized his career. He's a great defender and a good two-way player for this team. You have Jabari Smith Jr., one of the more dynamic floor spacing power forwards in the league. Great defender as well. Off the bench, you have Tari Eason, who's another dynamic defender, very physical, tough guy, and a good rebounder. Steven Adams is your backup 5. Reed Shepherd off the bench. Cam Whitmore, right? Like this team is so loaded with young pieces who I could see a lot of them taking big leaps next season, and Coach Udoka has really got these guys in a position to succeed and compete in this Western Conference. And a lot of these Western Conference teams towards the top are a little bit older, right? And so any team that has young legs, that's hungry and plays good defense and, you know, hustles on both ends, you can expect to win a lot of these regular season games. And so I could have them in the play-in tournament, no question, and play-in caliber makes a ton of sense for me. And I think they're one of the best play-in caliber teams on this list. For the Indiana Pacers, you know, this is a tough one for me, but I'm going to have to put them in very close. You know, I just think for the Pacers, while they did make the Eastern Conference Finals last season, and while they, really just could make it again, I think they had a lot of things go their way, and they bring back their core. You know, we are yet to see what a full season of Halliburton and, Siakam looks like, which is going to be fireworks. No question. These guys are going to develop chemistry. If we see the early season 2024 version of Halliburton, this is an MVP candidate type of, scorer and playmaker. That's what he was playing like early in the season before his injury. And you also are loaded another deep roster, right? You have basically depth at every position and good ones too. You have maybe the best backup point guard in the league. You bring in Wiseman to be a backup 5. You have Obi Toppin and Benedict Mathurin and all these guys. And so this team is a little bit better defensively, I think, after the offseason and after, getting some of these players returning. A lot of these guys could take leaps. We see, maybe some improvement from Jarris Walker, who earns his way into the rotation. A lot of things could happen. You're going to be starting Nembhard, who is another breakout candidate. And so this team is very close to being in this elite tier, no question. I think they might be just a tad behind the Cavs. I might have to give the Cavs the benefit of the doubt because I do think they have better, top end talent. And I don't know, it's pretty close between the Cavs and Pacers. I might slide the Pacers up. I don't know. I'm going to leave it there for now. Let me know down in the comment section what you think. But yeah, this team is very close. If they prove again this season that they are, a real legit playoff contender, I will have to move them up for the next season's list, and I will have to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I love the team. I just think some of these, Eastern Conference top end teams are a little bit more complete and a little bit more predictable as far as this season goes. And so Clippers, this is a play-in caliber team. This is probably going to be a round 40 win team. They're going to be fighting for that play-in spot, one of the last ones. I think they certainly could get it. We have to see if Kawhi, what he looks like coming out of the gate this season. He could miss some time. The knee has been such an issue for him. It's so unfortunate. Just as an NBA fan, I'm, someone who really enjoys watching Kawhi Leonard play basketball. It's very unfortunate, but if he does play anywhere from 60 to 65, 70 games, I doubt 70 is in the conversation, but anywhere from 60 games to 65 games, and James Harden plays most of the season, and you get some of the production out of some of these role players you bring in, like Derek Jones Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr. Similar production from Norman Powell, Zubac, right? This team is pretty good, and they're very versatile defensively. I love their defense this season. They have a lot of size and athleticism infused into this lineup after losing Paul George, and more depth at each position. That's a big key for me. And so James Harden is going to have a much bigger role. I think we saw in the playoffs last season where he did take a bigger role and really shined in the playoffs. We saw him have a good playoff series against Dallas, but they did lose. And so I have the Clippers in a play-in caliber spot. Everything considered, they might just be slightly above the Hawks because I think they're going to have a more high upside chance with Kawhi Leonard healthy, but that's assuming he's healthy. So if Kawhi Leonard plays 60 games, this team will be in the hunt for a play-in spot, no question for me. And potentially if we see KPJ take some good steps to revitalizing his career, this is a talented two-way player. I like the Clippers as a deep sleeper, dark horse kind of play-in caliber team in the 2025 season of Western Conference. Now the Lakers, obviously this is a playoff team, a playoff caliber team, excuse me. I'm not so sure they're going to be very close. You look at some of these teams up here, they're not quite that caliber, just the way they performed over the past couple seasons. This team is very talented, top to bottom. They have a good blend of young players, older players, superstars, good defenders. I think Coach Redick is really going to have an impact on this team. I just don't know what exactly it's going to be yet, right? Whether it's going to be super high ceiling raising impact, maybe we see Coach Redick take this team and do things with it we haven't seen before. I definitely expect that to happen. I think he's going to be kind of a experimental type of coach. Whether or not this will drastically change the results of this team's regular season, I have my doubts, but I think what we're really going to see is towards the end of the playoffs, how Coach Redick could maybe raise this team's ceiling a little bit. And maybe, again, this is another team towards the deadline, you could see some action start to happen here. The Lakers have made big moves, in the deadline in the past when they were fighting for playoff positioning. And so this is certainly a playoff caliber team as it stands. And, at the end of the day, this team in the playoffs is very dangerous with LeBron James and Anthony Davis being two of the league's best players still. And so these are two top 10 caliber players, right? So Lakers are tough to predict. They have a new coach. They have similar results the last few seasons, but I do think they underperformed, in a lot of those cases. And so I'm going to have them playoff caliber. I think if Coach Redick just uses these guys the right way and manages LeBron throughout the season correctly, so he's ready to go for the playoffs and, barring any injuries, this team is dangerous and they are hungry as well. I mean, they haven't really been to the mountaintop, right, since 2023 where they went to the conference finals, but you guys know what I'm saying. Memphis Grizzlies, this is a playoff caliber team. I want to see them put together a really good season again because it's been a couple years now. And last year being a very chaotic type of season. They had a lot of injuries, a lot of stuff going on in and out of the lineup, right? They found some young talent in G.G. Jackson, Vince Williams, both of whom will be injured to start the season, which is pretty unfortunate. But I expect this team to be in the mix for a playoff spot, not play-in, playoff spot. They will certainly be playoff caliber. Whether or not they're as good as some of these teams up here, I just don't know. Again, I have to see it across a 82-game season to project this team to be up there. You know, I want to see them prove it to me again, that they can be that type of team. The Western Conference has gotten better since they've had their little bit of hiatus last season. I like Zach Edey. He's going to be a really good big man in this league. I think he's certainly an upgrade over last season, which you had. You have Ja Morant coming back. He's probably going to be very hungry and eager to prove his worth once again to us in this league. And so I have them as playoff caliber. I'm just not sure. I could hear an argument that they're in the very close category. I just don't know that that's the case yet. And I would have them above the Lakers, no question. The Miami Heat, I'm going to be honest with you guys, this is maybe the hardest team to rank on this entire list, okay? The reason is because the Heat, just kind of like the Lakers, they are so subpar a lot of times throughout the regular season, and they always take it, very unseriously, right? And then towards playoff time, they really start to put everything together. This is a great roster, one of the better rosters I've seen the Heat have. Bam Adebayo taking more threes is going to be big for them. You have Khalil Ware making his rookie mark on this league. I think he's going to be a great backup five and potential key contributor to this team. You have guys coming into their second year like Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic. I believe might be his third year or second year. He's going to be on breakout watch, right? So this team is loaded top to bottom, and Jimmy in a contract year, this is big for him and his future in this league and with the Heat maybe in general. And so I have this team as a very close. Again, I could hear a case that the Lakers and Grizzlies are very close. I get that this might be a controversial one, but listen, when you consider how the Heat are going to perform in the regular season, there have been speculations that Jimmy will take this a lot more seriously this season as he's in a contract year. And so, I think they're going to have a little bit more intensity in the regular season, and that could help them. But it's really just about playoff time. This team, you do not want to face this team in the first round. They are as dangerous as they come. Every time the Heat are in a series, it's upset watch, all right? So this team is dangerous. They're very close. If this team added a star tomorrow, someone like Brandon Ingram, someone like, Zach LaVine maybe, I don't think that's a great fit, but you guys know what I mean. A player of that caliber, kind of a borderline all-star, but super, super talented player. I think Brandon Ingram's a good example. If they added Brandon Ingram tomorrow and maybe traded like Tyler Hero and a draft pick and maybe a young guy, this team is right in the mix for elite category, right? So we've seen this team so many times be counted out and then have the greatest upset playoff run. So they are very close to me. They're going to be towards the back end of it, but just don't take your eyes off the Heat. They will surprise you time and time again. For the Milwaukee Bucks, I also have this team very close, right? I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt over the Cavs, but not just quite in the elite tier, because when you consider Doc Rivers, potentially having a negative impact on this team, there are a lot of question marks, right? Like health and age on this team. This is an older team in the Eastern Conference. But all of that being said, they have probably the second or third best player in the world. Either one, he's either second or third in Giannis Antetokounmpo. You have Damian Lillard having another full season with him. Maybe they develop more chemistry with a lot of, adversity they had to face last year with injuries, people in and out of the lineup, and a new coach midway through the season. That's a lot of stuff to kind of build a consistent continuity with your teammates here, and particularly between Giannis and Dame. I have to see what Chris Middleton looks like, obviously. Brook Lopez, really good defensive anchor. So, at the end of the day, this team has all of the talent required. It's just, can they put it together with the guys they have and with Doc Rivers leading the show? That's the big question mark here. But I think if they can, they are in elite tier conversations. This team behind maybe 3 Eastern Conference teams has the best shot to get to the last dance, right? Get to the finals. And so this is a team where if everything goes well, they can challenge anybody on this planet as far as teams go. If everything goes maybe kind of like it has been, or maybe even just a little bit better, which I think is probably the most likely scenario, where they just, get a little bit better. They're on the tippy top of very close. But again, another team you just don't want to see in the playoffs if you're an Eastern Conference contending team. And for the Minnesota Timberwolves, obviously, this team's elite, all right? And so I don't know exactly where I want to put them between the Nuggets and the Mavericks. All 3 of these teams are very, very similar as far as their, rank in this elite bracket here. They are within a few games of each other in the regular season. They're also neck and neck come playoff time. I don't know who I'd bet on if I had a Nuggets-Wolves series or a Nuggets-Mavericks series. I lean more towards the Wolves, but listen, that was before the Cat trade, right? This team has a lot to prove to us as NBA fans before we start putting them in these conversations again with all the new things going on with this team. Julius Randle, is he going to fit well with Rudy Gobert? Is he going to fit well with Anthony Edwards? Is this going to be a seamless fit? As we know, they struggled to make the Cat fit work originally, right? That took a year. So Julius Randle's also a less proven talent than Karl Anthony Towns come playoff time, right? And so there's a lot of question marks, particularly with the Randle fit. Now, I will say they did get a ton better off of the bench and with their depth. I mean, this lineup on paper is great. Conley, Edwards, McDaniels, Randle, and Gobert. And then off the bench, you got guys like Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., Dante DiVincenzo, who is going to make a monster impact on this team as far as shooting the basketball and bench play and big rotation minutes. This guy's awesome. He's going to be a natural fit in Minnesota. Naz Reid off the bench, 6th man of the year last year. This team is so loaded with talent. They're going to be probably the best defense in the league again. I'd probably bet on it if I had to. The thing is about Minnesota, we just don't know about Gobert and Randle fitting with each other. And so I have them at the back end of this elite kind of tier here. And so, but they are elite, no question. This is a team we expect to make the conference finals. We expect great things out of, right? New Orleans Pelicans. This team is, in my opinion, in the playoff caliber range. I could see a case that they're very close. And I could see a case that they're right up in this kind of tier with some of these Eastern Conference teams. But the Pelicans, this team is really like a center away from being in this very close tier, in my opinion. The Pelicans are, towards the deadline, going to have to look for a playoff caliber 5-man. But the 1 through 3 of McCollum, DeJounte Murray, and Brandon Ingram is going to be massive, you know, in terms of playmaking and in terms of shot creation and dynamite offense, right? Like, this team is going to be a monster half-court team now with these 3 guys. And so the playmaking's outrageous. You have Zion Williamson slimming down seemingly this offseason and looking to make maybe a little bit more of a well-rounded approach to this season. And I think he has to prove that he's not just a downhill transition finisher, right? And don't get me wrong, he's probably one of the best top 3 or 4 in the league at that, right? He is exceptional in that regard. He's an all-star caliber player. But if he can be just a little bit better defensively, just a little bit better in terms of self-creation, you know, I'm not saying he's got to be, you know, hezzy tweening on the perimeter. That's never going to be his game. But if he can just add a little bit, maybe in the mid-range, and maybe just take a couple more threes than you'd expect, I think this team improves dramatically. If Brandon Ingram could take a couple more threes as well. But whether or not this team will trade Brandon Ingram, I think this team's one of the more interesting deadline teams to watch because they are a sleeper in this Western Conference. They add a very good, you know, capable defensive, you know, 5-man as center, right? This team's in the hunt for elite status. Everything goes well with the DeJounte Murray fit. If they fit well with him, Brandon Ingram gets a little bit better on the 3-pointers. If Zion Williamson gets a little bit better in the areas I mentioned and they add a 5-man, this is an elite caliber team in the West. You have Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, you know, potentially both coming off the bench for this team. I'm not sure if there's any better 2-wing combo in the league off the bench. You know, Herb Jones, just one of the best, you know, most reliable 2-way wings you could possibly have. I'm a little bit higher on the Pelicans than most people. It's just a center, man. If they just add a center, they are right in this mix, no question. The Knicks I have as an elite team. This is going to be the first Eastern Conference elite team I have. The elite in the Eastern Conference is a little bit different than the elite in the Western Conference. I might have the Knicks back here, right? Like, I think they might just be a tick below the Nuggets and the Wolves as far as how good they really are, right? But I do think in the Eastern Conference, they are the number 2 favorite, you know, to go to the conference finals and challenge the Celtics. Well, really the number 1 favorite in that regard to challenge the Celtics, in my opinion. I'm a little bit higher on the Knicks than some of my fellow Sixers fans might be. Obviously, there's a lot of hostility there. I don't really partake in all that stuff. I think it's toxic and unnecessary, and it's not even fun for me. I'm just a basketball fan, right? Like, I can get into the toxicity a little bit come playoff time, right? Like, that's something we all engage in, I think, a little bit for our teams. And I'm a passionate Sixers fan, but listen, I got to be real. This team is on paper better than us and more consistent and reliable than us in a lot of ways. And I have them a tick above us. You know what I mean? I think with the Cat trade, they've kind of separated themselves from us just a little bit if we're Sixers fans here. I do have them in the elite category, no question. I think they will be the second best team in the East this season. And, you know, considering how potentially if Mitchell Robinson isn't moved and he's healthy, you know, somewhere around December or January even, like, this team is so dynamic. And so maybe they add a playable wing. You know, this team lacks a little bit of wing depth, in my opinion. It's going to be a short rotation. Tibbs likes it that way anyway. But, you know, barring injury, this team is no question elite on both ends of the floor. And, you know, for the elite category, I have the Thunder at number 1. I mean, I don't know how you could make a case. People do, but I don't know how you could make a case this isn't the second best team in the NBA on paper, you know, going into the 2025 season. This is, in either conference, this is the greatest Boston Celtics challenger, in my personal opinion. You know, I don't even really know that it's all that close. You know, maybe you could say, well, you know, Hartenstein overperformed last year and he got a big contract, and I don't know, man. I'm struggling to find reasons why this team isn't going to be the best team in the West and the second best team in the NBA. I'm really struggling to find those reasons, and so until they give them to me throughout their play throughout the season, which I don't think they will, I'm going to have them number 2 all season long. They're just so deep and so versatile. There's almost zero weaknesses with this lineup, whether you're talking about the starting five or the bench. Adding Alex Caruso just, it really moves the needle for me. And so this team's defense on the perimeter is going to be second to none, other than maybe Boston. And so you have everything required to be in the finals next season. And so they just got to go do it. But, you know, barring anything I'm not foreseeing, or we're not foreseeing as the NBA community, this is the second best team in the league. And they are, no question, going to remain at the top of this elite tier, right below the Celtics for now, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with that. The Magic, I think they're in the very close tier, you know, maybe just below the Cavs and the Pacers. You know, I think there's a case you could make that the Magic are above the Cavs and the Pacers with the addition of KCP. We're projecting guys like Paulo Franz, Jalen Suggs, some of these younger guys like Anthony Black, Jet Howard to take a step up this season. That could really elevate them past a lot of these very close teams. But, you know, the Cavs have proven it time and time again. The Pacers have made the conference finals lately. The Bucks have the second or third best player in the world, you know, elevates their floor in my opinion as far as this list goes. And so when we're talking about the Orlando Magic, they've had one great season and an identity forming season with a young and up and coming team. Now you add KCP, who's going to make this starting lineup a ton better in the half court setting offensively. This is a sniper. This is a guy that already fits your defensive identity. When we're talking about point of attack defense, he is top tier, and he is a top tier catch and shoot player. You also have a great stacked second unit. You know, I've talked about how this is probably the best second unit in the entire Eastern Conference. Their size and their physicality from top to bottom on this roster is unmatched. They will probably be the best defense in the entire Eastern Conference, maybe the best in the league this season. The big question mark is just how much better is Paulo and Franz going to be this season. We know they're great. We know they're both all-star caliber. We know Paulo is exceptional and Franz is exceptional, and all these other guys surrounding them complement them well. Their potential and their ceiling has to be a little bit better if they're going to be the number one and number two on this team for years to come. They have to improve to get to where some of these teams up here are, like the Knicks, like the, you know, some of these West teams, and where the Celtics are, right? Like they got to take that next step to all NBA, you know, stardom, right? And so they're on the cusp. They just have to prove that to me until I put them in this elite tier, and I possibly could by the end of the season. I mean, this team's defense is so outrageous. They added a lot of shooting. Tristan Da Silva out of the draft, KCP in free agency. If I'm having to predict teams that will, you know, take that massive jump, right? We're talking about, you know, the conversation of teams like the Grizzlies, like the Magic, like the Rockets, some of these younger teams like the Thunder last season, like the Wolves last season. Like the Magic are next up in the NBA as far as those teams go. We just have to see it this season. So I have them at very close, and I could hear a case that they're top of very close, and by the end of the season I might have them at elite. Now, call me biased, call me crazy. I'm putting the Sixers, my Sixers, in elite, and I'm gonna make my case for it. At the time of recording this video, Joel Embiid's got a ton of injury stuff going on where his, you know, he's gonna be severely load managed. I think it's a good thing personally, but it doesn't look great to an outsider. I get it. Paul George just hyperextended his knee in the second preseason game with the Sixers that he's ever played. I get that this lineup is old. You know, we have a lot of super old veterans that are, you know, known for being injury prone. We have two top guys in Embiid and Paul George that are not known for, you know, being great playoff performers or winning championships. I get it. And so if you want to convince me that they're very close, I could hear a case. But when you just look at how good this team is on paper, are you going to sit here and tell me that this team isn't expected to make the conference finals at minimum? No, you're not going to tell me that, because they absolutely are. That is the expectation. If this team doesn't make it out of the second round, they will be ridiculed, deservedly so. If they are all healthy and they don't make it, we deserve to be ridiculed. I'll even take part in it, right? But this elite tier of teams is teams that have all of the talent and teams that are expected to make a finals run for this season. And so if they're all healthy, there's no question this team is right up there with some of these teams. The star power, they might have the best big three in the entire league. They have much more versatile defense with adding Caleb Martin into the mix. You know, they still have a lot of moves to make towards the deadline. I think we could see a move for another forward. Our team is great on paper. We just have to see it. We have to see it in the playoffs, particularly. No one cares about the regular season for my Sixers, and seeing how many games Joel Embiid is going to miss this season, he's not going to be playing any back-to-backs. This is even less of a thing where we care about how the Sixers perform in the regular season. None of us Sixers fans really care how we perform. As long as we make the playoffs, I could care less about how many games we win in the regular season, all right? Get us out of the second round and we'll be totally fine. It's just about that second round, man. That's the boogeyman for this team, but this team is expected to get out of that round. They are the third best team in the East on paper for me. Again, there could be some moves around the deadline for a better, like, power forward or maybe a better, you know, defensive type of guard. We'll have to see how it goes. This is where we're at. Call me biased, but I think there's a good reason I put them here. For the Phoenix Suns, I have them very close, slightly ahead of the Heat. This team has improved massively in the offseason. You know, if you asked me a year ago, I'd say playoff or play-in caliber. This team has improved a ton. You add Ryan Dunn through the draft, who I think is going to be a elite defensive player in this league for many years to come. You add Tyus Jones and Monte Morris in free agency to shore up that point guard position where you really struggled with turnovers last season. One of the worst teams in turnovers because they're running Bradley Beal, Devin Booker at the point guard. They both did okay at it, but they're just not point guards. If it wasn't for Bradley Beal and it wasn't for that contract, I'd say if they had a couple more moves to make, you could convince me that they're elite. Anywhere up here towards where the Bucks are, I just think this Bradley Beal situation is going to be the downfall of this team. I don't want to be too negative towards the Suns because I expect them to be very good in the West this season. I know they got swept last season, but that was by the Minnesota Timberwolves, who were on absolute fire and were a great team last season. But this is a team right now who have changed a little bit and added more defense that you just don't want to see in the first round. You tell me right now you want to see Devin Booker, Kevin Durant in the first round of the playoffs. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's the Thunder. Give me a lot of other teams over the Suns in that regard. And so I think the defense will be improved. You add Coach Budenholzer, who has coached very good defenses in the past. I think that is the big hallmark of this team. It's going to have to be improvement on the defensive end and the offensive execution. The turnovers have to be way down, which they will be with Tyus Jones. Everybody's got to stay healthy. This is a team with Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant. These guys got to stay on the floor. We've seen Kevin Durant have a monster season last year. I don't think that'll be an issue, but we got to see Bradley Beal play like Bradley Beal. I think that's the biggest thing. You have Grayson Allen off the bench. You have Royce O'Neal off the bench most likely. And so I love the improvements and the moves they're making this offseason. I think Coach Budenholzer is going to help in forming this team's identity, and I have them in very close. This team is a Bradley Beal trade away, and maybe another like monster defender. Like if you told me this team's trading Bradley Beal for a player like Herb Jones or Jalen Suggs or Alex Caruso, like a defender of that caliber and a guy who can not be a liability offensively, this team would be in elite category. This team might need a little bit more of a defensive center. I've kind of been saying that for a while as well. I like Nurkic. I think he's a good center, above average for sure, but I don't know that he's the right type of center that the Suns would need. But no question, this team is very close. They could make a good playoff run. They could be a top tier seed in the West. I expect them to be hovering around that playoff territory, play-in territory, anywhere from 5 to 7 or 8. It's kind of where they were last year. I'd expect them to be in that position again, but I do think this team got better, and I do think just having two of the best, top 10 to 15 players in the league and Durant and Booker, this just elevates their floor, no question for me. So Portland, this is a rebuilding team. I might have them a little bit above the Nets because they do have, guys like Denny Avdia, guys like DeAndre Ayton, guys like Anthony Simons. This pushes them above a little bit. Simons is another guy we could see moved. I'm just not sure yet, but Jeremy Grant, another guy. Like this team has some good players. I think they're probably going to be the worst team in the West, but I think they will win more games than the Brooklyn Nets, as weird as that sounds. But yeah, they're doing a great thing with the rebuild. They have a lot of talent. They have a lot of guys that we could see in the future plans of this team. We could see some of these guys move, like Jeremy Grant, like Robert Williams III, like Anthony Simons. And so Scoot Henderson, I expect to be on breakout watch this season. Same thing with Shaedon Sharpe. He's a phenomenal talent. He's going to miss some time at the beginning of the year, but either way, this team's absolutely absurd as far as their future goes. Now the Sacramento Kings, this is kind of interesting whether I want to put them in very close or playoff caliber. I'm going to put them at the back of very close, but I could definitely hear a case because I have the Pelicans and the Grizzlies in playoff caliber, and if I'm going to put those teams in playoff caliber, I have to put the Kings here. The only reason I'm putting the Kings at the back end of very close is because they recently just traded Jalen McDaniels, and I heard a report, and this is a verified report, I believe from a credible ESPN source, that this could be an indicator that a bigger move is coming. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what kind of bigger move the Kings would be looking to make. They just added DeMar DeRozan in the offseason, and that's a pretty big move in my opinion. I like the squad they have now to be a playoff team. I have them in the playoffs. They'll be no question in the mix between anywhere from 4 seed to 7 seed. This is where this team's going to be. Certainly a playoff caliber team, but very close because I'm hearing a lot of stuff about how this team might be looking to make a massive move. And so, if that is the case and it's a good one, then this team is very close. We're just not hearing that stuff out of the Pelicans right now, as far as I'm concerned. The Brandon Ingram stuff has settled down a little bit. And so the Kings are on the cusp. If they make a move that severely impacts their defense, then this is a very close team, potentially elite by the end of the season. We just have to see what the DeMar DeRozan fit looks like, but I love this team's potential and prospects to be a playoff caliber team with good upside in the playoffs. This is going to be a rocking and rolling offense in this league. For the San Antonio Spurs, I have playing caliber, probably somewhere like between Hawks, Hornets. I'm not sold on the Spurs yet as far as the 2025 season goes. A lot of people think they're going to be in the playoffs. I think that's a little bit overzealous, and when I say a little bit, I mean a lot of it. That's just not going to happen in my opinion, unless something major happens. I like this team a lot. I think they're building the perfect way around Victor Wembanyama. I think they're doing all the right things. But to say that this team is playoff potential, I just don't see that. I think play-in caliber is a much more realistic expectation for the Spurs. I'm not sure they're going to make the play-in. I'd probably trust teams like the Clippers, like the Rockets, like the Warriors, Lakers, Kings. This is just an unprecedented Western Conference as far as top to bottom. There's 2 teams in this conference that aren't going to be competing for a play-in or playoff spot. And so the Spurs are not one of them, though. They are 100% in the mix for a play-in spot. I'm just not sold on them as much as everybody else is as far as the season goes. And the reason I have the Hawks above them is because I think the Hawks are like a play-in spot in the East. Maybe not a lock, but if I had to bet it, I'd say the play-in's going to be the Heat, and it's going to be one of these teams probably for the Eastern Conference. And other than that, you have 2 wide open spots, and I think one of them just goes to the Hawks by default. And then maybe you could see some teams like the Hornets, Pistons, or Bulls. One of those teams, along with the Toronto Raptors, is going to have to make a drastic improvement to make the play-in tournament. I would say Hawks, Hornets are certainly the most likely in my opinion. Then you have teams like the Pistons, like the Raptors. I'm going to move the Bulls. I'm going to move the Pistons above the Bulls, and then you have the Pistons, Raptors, and Bulls. These teams are going to have to outperform the Hornets. It's just I like the Raptors a lot. I think they're going to be very good defensively. I think they have a nice combination of scorers and versatile defenders on their roster. I like the 2 big men, Hurdle and Olynyk. That is a great combo. These are high IQ guys that play tough defense and rebound the ball. I like the Raptors a lot. I think Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, these guys all could take big leaps next season. We've already seen Scotty Barnes perform like an all-star player last season and take that big leap as the leader of this team. We've already seen Quickley and Barrett play a lot better than they did with the Knicks on the Raptors, and they're going to improve drastically as well, especially Quickley. He's going to be the guy to watch for this breakout scenario. So, no question, these Raptors are right in the mix as far as the Hornets, Pistons, and Bulls. I think the Hawks are a little bit better than all 4 of those teams, but that's just my opinion. For the Utah Jazz, I have them slightly above the Trailblazers and the Brooklyn Nets, but they are a rebuilding team. This team will be nowhere near the play-in. Hopefully, if you're a Jazz fan, they won't be near the play-in, because this team needs to acquire more star caliber talent, and I think you do that through the draft this season with getting a very, very high draft pick in the lottery, and that's what the Utah Jazz are going to look to do. Already having Larry Markkinen on their roster, they're about a superstar away, or a couple star caliber, hopeful guys away from being in the Western Conference playoff mix. They already have 1 star, and so they just need a couple more guys to take a big jump. They need some things to move around as far as trades, and they have a ton of draft picks, like maybe the most in the league, I believe. So we could see some moves from the Jazz. Maybe they accelerate the rebuild this year. I just don't think it'll be this year, but this team is probably have a little bit better of a record than Portland, simply because of Larry Markkinen, simply because last couple years they've outperformed than what we thought they would. So Keontae George, look for him to take a big leap this season. He's going to be an excellent point guard of the future for this team, in my opinion. I think he has what it takes, no question, to be a super good offensive player. And then you have already good pieces that are guys in their prime, like Jordan Clarkson, John Collins. Like, these guys are proven talents that can carry this team forward above teams like Portland. No question, this team is interesting to me for the future, but just not this season. Same with the Wizards. This is the last rebuilding team. I'd actually put the Wizards above the Blazers and the Brooklyn Nets. This will probably be the 14th ranked team in the East this season as far as record goes. They're just not cut out for like playing, competition this season. I like what they're doing. I think they added 3 exceptional rookies through the draft who have a lot of upside in this league, who are going to make good NBA players, potentially great NBA players for a couple of them. You have good talent like Bilal Coulibaly. You have winning type of players like Corey Kispert, like Jonas Valanciunas, like Malcolm Brogdon, Kyle Kuzma as well. We just have to see guys like Jordan Poole take a leap. Have to see these rookies perform well. This is one of the higher upside teams in the future moving forward for the Eastern Conference. But this is the tier list, folks. Make sure you guys screenshot it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. I'll be leaving a link to the tier list that I made right here. You can click the link. It'll take you to my list. All right. What I want you guys to do is rearrange this list how you guys see fit, because I know some of you guys are going to disagree with some of my stuff that I have, some of these teams in the position I do. What I want you guys to do is re-rank this list. The link will be down in the description to this exact thing you're looking at, right? And you can move these teams around, reorganize it, take a screenshot of what you came up with for the tiers that I made, and then send it to me on Twitter. Follow my Twitter, twitter.com/dehave1, Twitter X, whatever you want to call it. I call it Twitter. Rearrange it how you would rearrange it using my criteria for the tiers, and then DM it to me on Twitter. My DMs are open. I would love to see what you guys come up with. I will follow you back. If you tweet it or DM me, I will follow you back on Twitter. So that is what I want you guys to do. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. Other than that, if you guys don't want to do all that extra stuff, leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the tier list that I set up, or or if you don't have Twitter, let me know. Leave a like on the video. You know, it would really help out the video, helps new people find the video, and it really helped me as a creator. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. You know, this is the biggest thing you could do. We're always looking for new subscribers and new people on the channel to enjoy the content. And so if you guys did enjoy the content, first of all, thank you guys for watching to the end, but also subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already, because we're on the road to 15K and I don't want you guys to miss any future content. So if you want to see more stuff like this, tier lists, NBA news, NBA rankings, NBA deep dives, just creative stuff as well, we'll be posting NBA content throughout the season nearly every day on this channel, just like this, and probably even better. So please subscribe. We're on the road to 15K and I want you guys to be a part of this. We're trying to do something special in this NBA community. Basketball is my passion and it is what I care about so much, and I love it more than anything. So I want to share it with you guys every day, and hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day today. Thank you guys for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one, probably tomorrow. Like, subscribe, comment, follow my Twitch, follow my Twitter, tweet me your tier list that you set up on Twitter, or DM me, either one. Tweet at me or DM me, I will follow you back. And this has been the NBA team tier list for the upcoming 2024-2025 NBA season. I will catch you guys in the next one. This is your boy D-Have, and as always, peace.